updates here from Pop Turner. Speaking to William Spetz about Ture, which is streaming on Netflix. Welcome to the show. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year's. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. This show is amazing. I just right off the bat, I just want to know because you're very invested in this project. You know, you made this project. You're in this project. What is that kind of mindset like, wearing many hats on a project, not just acting? Like, is it a lot easier than you think? Was it harder than you thought?
It's really passionate to
Yeah.
be in every part of the process. And I'm really reminded of like when I was 8 years old doing my own like YouTube videos, like being a part of every piece of the process. But it's easy if you can take it one hat at a time. Like when I had the discussion with Erica, our director, like the day before we started shooting, like I'm not a writer anymore. I'm not a creator anymore. I'm just Tore. I'm just the actor now.
Yeah.
So you take it from here. And then we found our way back to collaborating afterwards in the editing room. So I just think it's important to take everything one step at a time, because this kind of project for me, it's been my biggest dream my whole life.
Yes.
So it's easy to get overwhelmed of the mountain of just like, how will I do this? So also like when we shot it, I really had to take it just like, what is my character experiencing today?
And very close to your heart as well. Like you said, long time coming, this project. I do find it interesting as well because the journey of, in a way, the journey of writing something and then going and filming it are two separate journeys because a lot changes in between. I'm just curious for Ture, did it feel like one big journey writing it and then filming it, or did it feel like separate journeys specifically from an acting storytelling perspective?
That's a great question. I feel like the writing process was like a process of preparation, because when you're writing something, you could always have that distance of like, okay, now this is challenging, this is hard for me emotionally, so I can just take a break and watch Desperate Housewives and come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
And when you're shooting it, there's no Desperate Housewives. There's no like, there's no breaks, and and I couldn't like distance myself from the story when shooting it. So I feel like the shooting part of it, that was the part when I had to be in it completely and experience all the shit that's happening
Yeah.
to him. So that was like the most difficult part. And then the other processes like editing and writing and stuff, that's you can almost like be outside of the narrative. But when you're shooting it, you have to be in the grit with him.
Absolutely. And, you know, your character, there's many journeys and many things that he's figuring out. You know, there's the journey of his sexuality, there's the journey of grief and a lot of the traumatic things that kind of happened to his character and around him with his family. Did you know it was going to have many elements of a journey? Because it's not just that's, I think, one of my favorite things about the show, if I'm going to be honest with you, that there's a lot of journeys in one, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for saying that. I,
Yep.
I feel like that is what life is to
Yeah.
me. And that's what you're saying right there is what inspired me to do this show, because I remember when I lost my grandmother, who was my best friend,
Yep.
and that was around the same time I fell in love for the first time. And I was just so struck by how grief and pain and like the worst time of my life could coexist with also like falling in love and like the best time of my life.
Yep.
And that clash is so uh, like funny and kind of tragic and weird and really hard to grasp your head around. And I thought that was a really like human thing to just like jump between trauma and joy, and like can you have this euphoric coming of age state of mind while missing the one you love the most. So that element, those mixing those elements and mixing that genre thing with comedy and drama, that is what I like got excited about
And within the journeys of your character, there's a lot of messages and themes. I think one of them in regards to getting back to the grief, because I think that was a really big part of the show as well. And, you know, the self-reflection component and everything is there's no right or wrong way to grieve, basically. I think that's something. Was that something really kind of on the top of your list when you were writing the show specifically, or did that happen a little bit later on?
No, that was a part of it, because from my own experiences, grief is a fucking mess.
Yes.
Like pain is a mess. It's not linear. It's like the one moment you can feel all good, and one moment you can be self-reflective and make all the right decisions. But then when you're in pain, you make bad decisions. Like it's easy to be the good person when everything is fine, but I wanted to explore how like flawed we are when we're in pain, and that all our bad decisions and when we push our best friends away, it always comes from something. And I wanted to like explore that part of the story.
In terms of what we saw on Netflix, the show, rather than like how much of it, because I know things change all the time. You have ideas, you know what you want to do, storylines, things always change, William. You know what I mean? It always happens. But like how much of what we saw was part of the preliminary plans of Toure? Like, did you have like most of what we saw in mind for the show? Did it change? Like, I'm just curious about that.
It's interesting because like the core of the show is really the same. I remember like the first scene when Ture gets kicked out by his dad. That's like literally the same scene from the first draft.
Okay.
And so the first episode is pretty much the same in like structure, but then I have to say, like meeting the director Erica, she made this show like 100 times better than it ever would be without her. Because I remember our first meeting, and I was like talking about this coexistence thing about grief and happiness and joy and pain, and she was like, "Shouldn't we have a dance sequence like 5 seconds after Torres' dad gets hit by this garbage truck?" And I was like, "Dance sequence?" She's like, "Yeah, because you're talking about those things, and wouldn't that be a great way to like open the show?" And I was like, "I'm in love with you," because that was exactly the things I could never have like figured those things out. So we had such a beautiful collaboration, and with the producer too. So everyone I worked with, I loved seeing them put their take on the story, like from Erica to down to costume. Like our costume designer Emily created this drag world that was amazing. So
Yes.
the intentions and the dreams and the the visions were the same, but then I worked with people who just like elevated it. Because I come from low budget. I come from
Yeah.
doing things for like 10 crowns. So it's like my question at the meetings were always like, we can afford that. Like we can't do that. And Erica was like, but we have to dream big. And like people make student films that are visually amazing. So we have to
Yeah.
just do. So
I
that
also
you
write. I write too, and I'm a creative as well, and I've done some short films.
yeah.
You always have that in your mind to like write it so it's not too
Yeah.
expensive.
Yes. But she helped me to get rid of that. And then because there's always like limitations, so you have to like cut down, but you have to that you have to get that out of your way,
Yeah.
whatever the budget.
I'm asking William Spetz this question in regards to acting in the show, not writing, because I feel like, of course, when you're writing, this kind of happens. But when you're filming the scenes you're acting, how conscious are you of the audience member watching the show while you're filming it? Because I feel like that's interesting, because sometimes it's hard not to. Sometimes you're in the zone, you're acting, you know what I mean? But maybe you look at, like you mentioned, like the dance sequence, right? About the grieving. Like maybe you're like, oh, people are really gonna, talk about this. Like, does that happen a lot? Like, I'm just curious about that.
I thought a lot about that like after we shot it,
Okay.
but such a big part of my process when I'm doing it is just like, how do I shut that out and
Yeah.
how do I shut that perspective off? Because if I think about that, I start thinking about, first of all, like, how do I do this in front of, like, that's the worst thing
Yeah.
you can think about, but also like from the character's point of view, like I can't think about those things because then I will start worrying, will people like him?
Yeah.
How do I defend this bad decision and
Yep.
all those? So I really, but it's interesting because it's like, it's
It's
very
around. It's around.
actively
It's
like,
there.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you have to like, but that's like the same thing as literally when you're shooting and there's 50 people in the room when you're having tourists having sex for the first time, and there's this like cameraman just like standing on your foot and you're naked, and it's just like such a big part of acting, I think, is just like shutting things out. It's not only getting into something, it's also like, how do I pretend that some things aren't happening?
Totally. And, last question before we wrap up. I just find it always interesting. You are from Sweden. This is a Swedish show. I think it's so amazing because Sweden, from a population standpoint, is a smaller country. There's only about 10
Yeah.
million people. And there's so many incredible shows and movies and music, coming out of this country that I love. You know what I mean? Like some of my favorite artists are from Sweden. You know what I mean? I listen to an artist called Bolaget, who I think is
Oh,
really awesome. You know what I mean? And they're Swedish. So I'm just wondering, it's cool to think about, and Netflix kind of helps us as well because it's worldwide, that like, a country that has a smaller population is being able to kind of, their shows and movies are be able to see on like a global scale. Like it's crazy to think about, right, William?
it's crazy. I can't like just talking to you right now. It's amazing to me because I never I never thought about that this would be available in like 190 countries. It's crazy. And I'm so
Netflix, man,
grateful.
it's so crazy.
It's crazy because I thought like this is a maybe me and my friends will be able to like identify with this story, but then to have people from like the whole world writing me and just like this happened to me too, or
Yeah.
this is my dad, that's like the most beautiful thing. And that's why we do this. That's why you love I love movies and I love music, so because it's universal. So it's
Yeah.
crazy.
It's interesting because Ture came out a little after the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Like it didn't come out during the pandemic. I'm sure you were kind of in post-production and figuring things out around the pandemic, but it came out at a time where it was like 2, 3 years before that, William. We were all doing a lot of self-reflection during the pandemic because we had
Yeah.
the time to do so. So I feel
Yeah.
like a show like yours comes along and, like you said, instantly becomes kind of more relatable because people were thinking about a lot of the things they see with your character. If you think,
We all have our own crisis.
do you
We're all
think
in
no? But it's interesting to think about that, right? Like you think about how we were all doing self-reflection nonstop for 3 years, and then
Yeah.
these shows like Tour come along and they really, help in a lot of ways, and they really let us kind of relate. So in that regard, thank you for a show like this.
Thank you. Thank you for watching. It means the world to me.
Absolutely. And the episodes are streaming on Netflix, so they could
Yeah.
check them out. Well, it was so great chatting with you. Thank you so much for coming on
Nice chatting with you
Alternative.
too. Nice meeting you.
Yeah, absolutely. You have an Instagram account, right? People can keep up to date with everything. Is it
Yeah,
just
yeah,
your
yeah.
name?
Just my name.
It's just William Spetz.
Yes.
Awesome. And thank you again for your
Thank you for
time.
taking-
And people will check out Today on Netflix, youtube.com/popternative for previous episodes. Until next time, this is William Spetz and PD Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.